I felt like even though this was an event that had happened years prior, I felt like it needed to be brought back up, and we needed to kind of put the spotlight back on it because the reconstruction, the rebuilding of New Orleans was still happening, and a lot of the people that were responsible for what happened in New Orleans or had yet to be held accountable for it, because certainly part of New Orleans was man-made. You know, it wasn't all just a natural disaster. These were things that failed, that were man-made infrastructure that failed. And while we were putting that song together, the BP oil disaster, just boom, the city gets hit twice. You know, and that happened just after I left the city and really felt a connection to it, and so that's where that song came from. But other topics include, we did Make It Stop, September's Children,
right?
Which
The
was
bullying,
about,
the anti-bullying campaign, and Make It Better.
Yeah, it was all about homophobia, specifically in the rock scene, which is where we dwell. You know, and a song written in the wake of the gay teen suicides of September 2010. I felt like we wanted to address it because we didn't feel like many rock bands were addressing it. And there were certainly even fans of ours who had questions about where we stood on it, you know.
I think you talked a little bit about that, too, about some fans being dicey about whether or not they could accept a gay or transgendered Rise Against fan.
Well, yeah, it was almost, I didn't even hear from those fans as much as I heard from fans who were gay and were wondering if they fit into the Rise Against community. And like, it just hurt my heart to think that fan would have that question, like that would be there being doubt at all. And so I felt like, well, I guess we've never really made this perfectly clear, and so maybe we should make it perfectly clear. And I felt like it was also timely because there was a comment needed to be made to make sure that people knew our community was open to all people, and there was no judgment and no bigotry would be tolerated in our audience. And if you were somebody who was going to judge somebody for their sexual preference, then maybe you weren't welcome in the Rise Against community.
I think one of my favorite parts about that whole campaign and what you guys were doing was that it created more discussion, and it made me think, because it made me wonder, does it really get better? Because you look at people who are educated, who are old enough to know better, people like Ann Coulter, who just this week went on the air and called John McCain, who was a war hero, she calls him a douchebag. So I'm curious, how do we stop the bullying? How do we make it better? We can't just tell these kids that it gets better. We have to make it better.
It's true, and that trickles down from the way our government, from the way the establishment treats gay people. We live in a country now that treats gay people as second-class citizens. If you treat the gay community as second-class citizens, that will trickle down to the hallways of our high schools and our children. They'll see the way that their country treats gay people, and they will think it's okay to treat their classmate that way.
That's why I always wondered, why do we have to have gay rights, women's rights, black rights, a gay community, this community, that community? Why can't it just be a community? Why do we have to put people in a box?
Especially here in America in 2011.
I know, right?
We live in crazy times, you know, and to be treating people here within our own border.
Well, there was a story yesterday in Kentucky that a church is banning interracial marriage. It's like, did we just go back to 1962?
I saw that story. Yeah. It's so incredible. And whereas I think that something like bullying is very intangible, we can create awareness. Bullying has been around long before any of us were around, and it will probably be around for a long time. That's just part of human nature, you know.
It seems like it's gotten worse though with technology, which contributes to it.
Right, that's poured
keyboard courage.
Yeah, it's always been a fire, but technology's kind of poured gasoline on that fire. And there aren't any obvious solutions to bullying. You know, we can create awareness. I think that's very helpful. But something like homophobia, there are solutions to this. You know, there are still parts of our society that need to be outed for the way they treat the gay community. Like this issue should be in the wake by now. I mean, this is our generation's civil rights, you know, and I think that there are people now that are going to fall on the wrong side of history, and they know it.
Tell me about Satellite, because when I first heard the song, I always pay attention to what you're singing, not just the music, but what you're saying, because the way you guys use language, it's delicious and it's thick and there's some meat to it. And on Satellite, you say, we have the rest of our lives. And it took it to a whole new level when I saw the video, because it seemed like a love letter to your fans.
Yeah, it was. You know, I think there's a lot of Rise Against songs that are about other people and other issues and what's happening around the world. Satellite was kind of self-indulgent, I'll be honest. It was sort of like a Rise Against rallying cry stance. It was us and our fans against the world, you know. It came from, you know, being a band that isn't afraid to go out on the limb and say what we want to say. You take flack, you know what I mean, from people from time to time. And you have a choice either to put your tail between your legs and try to, you know, acquiesce to what the audience, like the critical audience wants, or you can stand firm in what you believe and let people know, hey, we're not not going anywhere. And in fact, we're just going to keep turning it up, you know. And Satellite was our way of saying we're still here. And if your feathers were ruffled by things that we did before, then they're really going to get ruffled now. By
I loved how you singled out fans. That was really...
the video. Yeah, that our fans are incredible. You know what I mean? And that was a song where I felt like we wanted to showcase our amazing fans and the way the music affects us and the way it affects our fans.
Can I tell you something sexy?
Oh, of course.
In the video, Zach, with the umbrella situation, he's horsing around with that. I have a thing for bald guys. But,
he's Texan, too.
Hello. Win-win. Chrissy Hine, back in the day, middle of the road. You remember in the middle of it, she would go. Brrr. That was me with Zach. So if he needs Santa for Christmas,
I'll send him your way. He's Sherman, Texas's finest.
Now tell me what's up for Rise Against. What are you guys doing for the holidays, and what's coming up for Rise Against in 2012?
A handful of shows, much like your show here tonight, that we're happy
Day
to
to Remember is touring with you. Right?
We're taking Day to Remember out on tour.
Have you been courting them for a while? I read an interview where they said that you're the only band that understands what they're doing.
You know, I think that in the rock world, the ranks are dwindling, you know what I mean? And there are fewer and fewer bands that sort of come from the world we come from. They're a band that certainly came from places like the Warped Tour, which is where we came from. We have some friends in common. And, you know, we're a band that's always looking for people to tour with, you know, and they're a band that's kind of been on our radar. We've been kind of watching them grow. And I'm happy to see bands that still play guitars and still play heavy music, like, grow and be able to play on the radio and that kind of thing. And so I think that there's a kinship there. And so, and I'm happy to bring Rise Against fans to them, and I hope they bring their fans to us. I think it's going to be a really, really cool tour. It's a massive tour. It's like 2 months long and 2 different legs. We're really looking forward to it.
Well, awesome. We hope to see you guys back in Dallas in 2012. Have a great holiday, and thanks so much for stopping by.
Thanks for having us.